Collier, you ready? Ricky, you ready? Okay, we're gonna go back in session. Number one, 2020 UA 132, Mississippi Power Company, in reference to the petition for a certificate of public convenience and necessity authorizing the construction, acquisition, and operation of a solar generation and battery storage demonstration project and related facilities in Leake County, Mississippi. Mr. Cox, go ahead.
Petitioner, Mississippi Power Company, is ready to proceed. My name is Ricky Cox. I'm joined by Leo Manuel, the law firm of Balch and Bingham, Gulfport, Mississippi, 1310 25th Avenue, Gulfport, Mississippi.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and Ross Hammonds and Catherine Collier for the Mississippi Public Service Commission.
Okay. We good? So, will each representative from the company and their counsel make an appearance for the record? Just y'all?
It's just us.
Okay. All right, so do we have any witnesses present?
We do, Mr. Chairman. Allison Little on behalf of Mississippi Power Company.
Okay, Ms. Court Reporter, will you swear the witness?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Cox, bring the witness forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I proceed?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Little. Would you please state your name and your business address for the record, please?
Allison Little, 2992 West Beach Boulevard, Gulfport, Mississippi, 39501.
Please speak into the mic. So
Yeah, sorry. I feel like
what's your current position with Mississippi Power Company?
the Renewable Energy Program Manager.
Okay, and in that capacity, were you responsible for the filing in this particular docket?
I was.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the petition and your testimony before appearing today?
I have.
Is the information contained in both true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
Do you have any additions or corrections to that testimony today?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the questions that are contained in your testimony this morning, would your answers in fact be the same?
They would.
And do you adopt that testimony as your testimony in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, and as part of that, you had one confidential exhibit, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so that's kept separate from the rest of it. At this time, we would offer the petition and Ms. Little's testimony as composite exhibit 1 with the confidential exhibit filed separately. Okay. Do you have everything, madam? Okay. All right, so Ms. Little, you also had, there were several data requests that were propounded by the staff, is that correct?
That's correct.
There was a set 1 which contained 46 data requests.
46.
Set 2, and then we filed supplemental responses, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At this time, we would offer the data request, including the first set, second set, and supplemental, along with the confidential exhibits or responses that we provided the court reporter as the next exhibit. Part of it is the CD. The CD contains the voluminous contract. It's all of that paperwork that I provided you, and I know staff has a copy of it. So that'll be marked as Exhibit 2. May I proceed? Okay. Ms. Little, just a couple of other questions for you. Would you take a minute to kind of summarize this project and kind of describe for the commission how it's going to work?
Sure. Walnut Grove is an advanced DC-coupled solar plus storage facility. So the solar portion of the project will be a little over 2.5 megawatts, and part of it will be divided into test blocks that will allow us to better understand bifacial module performance. That solar is then going to be DC connected to a little over 5 megawatt hours of battery storage. And when I say DC connected, solar and storage both generate DC power. in an AC connected facility, you would have solar, an inverter, and then AC output on the other side of that inverter. The storage would also have an inverter, an AC output on the other side of that inverter. In a DC connected facility like this, the solar and storage are both DC connected behind or on the DC side of the inverter. And the significance of that is being DC connected allows the storage to capture clipped energy. And when I talk about clipped energy, essentially the inverter has a rating. Any generation over that rating becomes lost, clipped energy, lost energy. Being DC connected allows the storage to capture that clipped or otherwise lost energy. One other point about the facility is the inverter. It has advanced functionality in that it does have grid forming capability. So when I say grid forming capability, I mean that in the event there was an outage on the transmission radial that feeds the town of Walnut Grove, the facility would be able to essentially disconnect from the grid and island, or so with the generation from the solar and storage in the facility, it would be able to carry the load there in Walnut Grove.
So you mentioned Walnut Grove, so explain to the commission why Walnut Grove was selected as the site for this particular pilot and demonstration project.
Knowing what we wanted to demonstrate, there were basically two main criteria. One was keeping costs as low as possible, and the second was being on a radial feed in order for us to best demonstrate that microgrid or islanding functionality. So Walnut Grove is in fact at the end of a radial transmission line, and at a peak load of around 1.5 megawatts, it allows us to build a facility at a smaller scale, which translates to a lower cost.
Thank you, Ms. Little. So at this time, we don't have any other questions on direct, and we would tender the witness for cross-examination. Questions from the commission?
All right, thank you, Mr. Cox. Do the commissioners have any questions for the witness?
I got a question for the witness, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bailey, that's your home county. If you got a question ahead of me. Fire away. You're supposed to say in Lee County, the home of Commissioner Brent Bailey. Thank you very much for your testimony today. You mentioned just a minute ago about the microgridding, and I know that you're familiar with the electric utility industry and trends within it. And I'm interested to talk to you this morning about a couple of things. Number one is, in the vein of the value of these type of scaled pilot projects. I'm old enough and gray enough to have been here when Entergy came before the commission years ago to look at 3 solar projects that were of this nature and of this size, not particularly just this size. One in the north, central, and the southern to monitor solar outputs and the best way for the utility to integrate solar power onto the grid and be able to measure it and make sure we're getting the most value. Fast forward to today,
Right.
and this commission has approved hundreds of megawatts of solar generation, and there was true value from a public interest standpoint of understanding that in the beginning. So to the question of microgrids and just industry trends, based upon your knowledge of this, I mean, would you agree with the statement that this commission is going to be faced with more and more questions going into the future related to the value of microgrids, distributed energy resources, how one would smartly integrate those type of infrastructure pieces into your company's operation?
Yes, sir.
And is that something that you're seeing around the nation as far as what other utilities are dealing with?
Yes, sir.
And so when we look at this particular project, and I've looked at the rate impacts and the issues that are involved there, would this be able to give Mississippi Power the true on-the-ground experience to understand the relationship between the solar generation and storage as it could function? And I assume you come here today, I mean, I'm assuming this, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, under the idea that this is a way to learn from this experience so that when this agency, when you come back before us, it may be 2 years, 1 year, 10 years, to look at a larger scale facility if the public interest dictates that you will have some real life experience in how this operates on a scale in which is financially not dangerous to the company's wherewithal or the customers, but secondly, you have firsthand, I want to say on-the-job training, but something akin to that with the relationship between storage and solar generation. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, and then my last question is this. Are you familiar with what has happened I'm sure you are, but just for the record, what has happened in the state of Texas related to the ice storm and the issues there?
Yes.
If there had been, let me rephrase this question. Would battery storage related to renewable energy generation, would battery storage have helped protect the citizens of the state of Texas had they had that integrated at that time based upon your knowledge of the failures of the system in the state of Texas?
You know, the issues in Texas are fairly complex, but what I do know is that the more a system relies on intermittent renewable resources like solar and wind, the more important storage becomes, like battery storage.
Right. So let me rephrase that because I kind of muddied that question up a little bit. Any utility system faced with a natural disaster of an ice storm, tornado, hurricane, something else, would there be, and I'm talking from the utility company's operation standpoint, are there quantifiable benefits to protect public health, public safety, public welfare, for there to be an ability for Mississippi Power Company, having come through Katrina, having come through hurricane seasons, having come through time and time again, issues in which your company's done a stellar job of getting the power back on. And what you're here asking us today for is to measure this. Would there be benefits of being able to store that electricity for a certain amount of time to be able to call upon it at different times of the operating day?
Yes, storage does provide some amount of resiliency, yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. That's no further question from me.
Got anything?
I think that's the word he was looking for, resiliency, and
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to mention that as well. And maybe it's something to expand on, the resiliency attributes and benefits of not just this project, but resiliency in general and what it means to a more stable grid, more affordable energy, and as I said, serving the general public. And I don't know if that's something you want to expand on just a bit more, particularly rates as it relates to the Walnut Grove application, but in general and as it relates to the future production, generation, applications of resource management in Mississippi Power service territory.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
That's
I'm
what
sorry. I'm sorry.
But I think he got exactly where he was trying to go with that, and I was waiting for that R word, resiliency,
Yeah.
to come out. In
Yeah.
that, while it's certainly something we're struggling, maybe not struggling, but certainly trying to find how to value that
Yeah.
going forward. The application of this, the research, the demonstration, the various parts of it, what you talked about, the utilization of solar and storage, capturing that clipped energy, the
Yeah.
the ability to match the demand profile of the city of Walnut Grove. It's sort of remoteness from the general grid, from the general grid. All those have a value built into this to help you learn as a company, us learn as regulators of how resource applications and planning is going to go forward. So that's about all I had mentioned on that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. No, I didn't know if there was.
throw one more question at you. As you're aware today, your project would be the first project in the state of Mississippi as of today. We've got some that we're having hearings on later in the week, but as of today for a rate-regulated utility, yours would be the first project of any nature of storage. Is that correct?
To my knowledge.
Yeah, to your, right.
There
You're
are
right.
there are certainly smaller.
Yeah, they're smaller.
Residential, small business.
Right, but not from a rate-regulated utility. And so I just want to say to Mississippi Power, thank you for being forward-looking in this. I think that it's very important. As we see the mess that went on in Texas, we've got to learn from that. We can't stick our heads in the sand, and I appreciate your testimony.
Do you guys have any questions for the witness?
No question.
All right, anybody else? You can be excused.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have nothing further, Mr. Chairman, and Mississippi Power will rest at this time.
Okay, hearing no further questions for the witness, and then let's have a motion. Do anyone care to?
Yes, probably I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to construct the appropriate order recognizing approval of the project.
Is that directed to our legal staff?
Right. I'm sorry. So our legal staff, the commission staff, to construct the appropriate order recognizing the attributes and approval of the Walnut Grove Solar Project.
Second that.
Did I capture it?
Good job. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank everybody for your time today, and it's good to see everybody back at the courtroom and getting back to the way it used to be.